Welcome back to the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Watkins, here with special guest, legendary Big 12 broadcaster, Mr. Greg Swaim from the Greg Swaim Show. Welcome to the show. We are going to talk about everybody's favorite topic, Greg, conference realignment. Thanks for joining the show, man.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, really, it's looking all indicators point to Colorado going to pull the trigger. Your mark has basically come out and said, we'll let them get their package set up first. Let's go ahead and let them get their media package set up. He doesn't want to look like the bad guy. The Big Ten doesn't want to look like the bad guy taking, Oregon and Washington. I think what's going to happen in the long run, and nobody can predict the future, of course, but as of today, it looks like Colorado will join. Arizona will be right behind them. Jason, those might be the only two that your mark takes from the Pac-12 because he wants to say something for the ACC. And yes, I know the ACC is in their ESPN locked-in contract. Ironclad, there's no such thing as an ironclad. You ask any lawyer. There's always an out somewhere, a wiggle room. And I think the ACC will blow up soon enough. So I think Yormark takes two for the Pac-12, and that would be today, Colorado and Arizona. I don't know how much Utah and Arizona State have had interest. They've kind of badmouthed the conference. But then again, Colorado and Arizona have from time to time, and I don't blame them at the time because, we want to show we're tight together. We're Pac-12. We're locked in. We're all AAU. We're so freaking smart. We're smarter than everybody else. And yeah, well, how's that working for you, buddy?
Those guys like the Montes of the world and the Tony Altimores of the world that are intertwining AAU and all this, the research money and the money that you get for academics and stuff, which has, you and I both know, has nothing to do with what conference you're in.
Nope.
Those guys are so full of crap. And I won't say the other word, but I won't. But it's just been a joke. And I tell you, those are the kind of things that, I think that if you're Utah, you've kind of backed yourself into a corner now, haven't you? Because of all the things that they've said about the Truck Stock Conference and just some ugly stuff. And there's a few fans that are worse than others. But even their athletic director has been less than nice about the Big 12. And listen, it seems to me when you're only lifeline, and you've been a Power 5 school for about 10 minutes, by the way, Utah.
Yeah.
So
right out of the French out of the Mountain West.
Bite the one hand that might be able to give you a hand up once all this comes apart. Because even if, we're going to go through some of the stuff that you've been tweeting for the last 24 hours, but I really wanted to say to me, it's weird that all this stuff continues on because even if it was to stay together, let's just stay by some stretch of the imagination. I see that Jim Williams was talking about that chances are the Big Ten isn't going to invite Oregon and Washington right away even, right?
Right. So, they're not inviting anybody is what they're saying publicly. But I talked to one of my guys in Indianapolis that covers the Big Ten and one of my guys in Chicago last night. And they both said, we don't think that, they did say, look, if tomorrow, we needed two teams, those would be two teams at the top, and it's, they're waiting for the ACC too. The AAU stuff came out Friday, had 5 new schools or whatever it was. And Arizona State was one of them. And that probably has something to do with them staying. I don't have a problem with that. And I don't really want them anyway. I don't know if I haven't had any Big 12 fans who go, we got to get Arizona State. We just got to. No, they want Arizona. And if you have Arizona, why do you need Arizona State? If you have BYU, why do you need Utah? I mean, they're the same market. BYU has a worldwide market because they're LDS faith. And
more than Notre Dame, they just have a brand that is noticed around the world. I saw you talking about that with Bomber last week.
Well, there's a lot more Catholics, obviously, in the country than there are LDS. But there's a lot of LDS around. You know, you see those guys riding their bikes every town you go to, right? So,
absolutely.
and I got to, you know, I'm not LDS, but I got to give them a lot of credit. They put their money where their mouth is, and they get it done. But they go to every country. So if you go to Chad in Africa, or you go to Yugoslavia, or whatever, the Yugoslavia Republic, whatever it's called today. I'm behind on my geopolitics, but they're not going to know Alabama. They're not going to know Ohio State. They're not going to know USC. They're going to know BYU because they met those people have come into their homes, come to their doors on their bikes, you know.
Absolutely.
And I know we kind of laughed at, but and I gave this story before. I might have given it on Bomber's show. I'm not sure, but I've given out a lot. I used to date a Mormon girl when I was in undergrad at Oklahoma State back around '83, and a real sweet girl from Utah, and went to church with her a couple times. And back then, satellite was pretty new, right?
Right.
But they had it, and every Saturday, the entire congregation would show up to watch BYU football. And that was before, you know, we had satellite, but we were just getting cable in Stillwater at that time.
That was when satellites were as big as your house.
Yeah, that was when they had those. We want our MTV commercials, you know,
yeah,
stuff like that. So it's obviously about 40 years ago, but it doesn't seem too long ago. But back then, you know, satellites were not everybody had one, obviously.
I remember you had to go out there and crank that sucker to get it to move to the spot where you wanted to watch stuff. I remember that stuff, man.
Exactly. But BYU does that. Well, BYU was such a good get. That's why, you know, I know you've been around a long time. I've been fighting for them for about 15 years. Yeah. Like, you know, in OU and Texas kind of stopped it a little bit. And I don't blame them because they just needed more money. And basically that was another mouth to feed. And I get that. And that's why we didn't expand and take more teams when we lost those 15 years ago. It wasn't, it was more Texas, I think, than OU. But then again, I mean, those two teams are blue bloods. They've earned it, the history and all that. And so they can kind of name their figure, and that's why they can go anywhere they want. Now, OU's not AAU accredited, so Big Ten, you know, wasn't going to take them, but SEC was just waiting for them. And it's going to be interesting to see. I don't want to change the subject, but I want to ask you, because I know you follow those teams too. How do you think OU and Texas will do day one, like, you know, first year in the SEC? Because I think it's going to be awfully tough.
I think it's going to be tough. I think that when you look at where they're at recruiting wise, now this is not a problem for Texas ever recruiting. It's putting those recruits together.
They've always had great classes.
And the thing about Sark is, you know, he's never won 10 games. So I mean, until he does that, you see people picking them to win 11 games and win the conference.
Not anybody in the Big 12.
And I'm like, yeah, it was somebody in the Big 12 on Twitter.
Oh, was it really?
Laughed and laughed. I was like, oh yeah. Until I see him win 10 games, he's only won 9 once. So I don't know. And you know, as an Oklahoma fan, horns down.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the picture I put up with your hat. I mean, you know, and they get so offended by that. I mean, it's, you know, it's just amazing to me. But you know, I've got a lot of relatives in all the Texas schools, Texas Tech, A&M, you know, Baylor even, and the TCU. But it's fun to mess with them a little bit. But, you know, one of the great things I think is going to be about the Big 12, because at another show I was watching this morning, they were going to, okay, who's going to be the alpha dogs of the Big 12? I think that's the beauty of the Big 12. We have no alpha dogs. We have no 9s and 10s. But we don't have any 0s and 1s either. We've got a bunch of 7s and 8s.
Brutal conference year.
It is. It's going to be ridiculous. And a lot of it, you know, Jason, they just came out with a schedule not too long ago, but I think it's going to come down to your scheduling each year. Are they going to do it like the NFL, where if you suck the year before, you get an easy schedule, and if you're really good, you get because it seems that way. Oklahoma State got a really easy schedule this year.
I tell you, I was surprised. I figured And Cody keeps telling me, Cody Stovall, one of the friends of the show, we love us some Cody.
I need a bottle of energy from Cody. He's got plenty to spare.
Don't we all? I love that guy, man. We enjoy.
We're a little
give him a hard time
older.
about Oklahoma State, and and as we get to know each other a little better, I'll probably do the same with you. But
you can do it anytime.
It's all in fun, man. It's all in fun, and
that's what makes it fun.
Oh yeah, man.
I mean, I tell people this like Swaim, how can you be an OSU guy 2 times over? How can you, your whole family's OSU? How can you have, an OU attorney and an OU agent and an OU doctor and an OU what? Because they're the best. Most of the people I've met through basketball, but they're just really good at what they do. And I don't, I'll tell you this story because you're an OU guy. But when Kelvin first came to OU.
Yep.
And of course, I do basketball. You know that.
Sure.
Kelvin came from Washington State. He had taken my service when he was an assistant for Judd Heathcote at Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
Then when he became a head coach at Wazoo, he took it there. So he comes to OU and he asked me to come speak at his camp, and tell kids what we look for when they're younger and stuff like that. And so we sit down and talk while the kids are playing ball and stuff. And he goes, I didn't even think about this when I was at Washington State, but aren't you an OSU graduate? And I'm like, well, yes, sir, I am. But when it comes to my business, I'm only loyal to one color, and that's green. He puts his arm around me and goes, buddy, we're on the same side. and all coaches are mercenaries, so they get it. They know that we all went to school somewhere, but when we're drawing a paycheck from somebody else, we're their guy. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tell you, it's something. And I tell you, I mean, obviously we've been kind of got off track here a little bit, but I wanted to talk a little, and so I do want to talk a little bit. But I do remember. Here's one of the games that I think you're going to remember very well. Was my last year covering Tech. Ronald Ross against Williams, or I'm sorry, yeah. Oh man. Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, Big 12 championship. Ronald Ross.
Was that when Bob was coaching still?
It was, man. And I remember that obviously you had oh man, why am I can't believe
I'm bad. Guys move so fast.
Those guys were so good. That's when you had Big Country that year. I'm pretty sure, right?
No, you're talking about the two. Are you talking about 2004?
It would have been John Lucas. It was John Lucas against Ronald. That was one of the greatest games I've ever. Those guys went back and forth at each other.
2004 Final Four team. But I remember that game because Oklahoma State got in foul trouble. Were we in Dallas or Kansas City that year? I can't even remember.
Dallas.
OSU got behind and got in foul trouble. Eddie goes to a zone, which, if you know Eddie and Bob, neither of them ever go to zone. It's got to be an emergency, right? So after halftime, Bob comes out and he whispers something in Eddie's ear. And we asked him later on what he said. He goes, Mr. Ibis turned over his grave. You're running his zone. But it paid off. The Cowboys ended up winning. That was a really good group because it kind of reminded me of some of the Tech teams in recent years that went to the Final Four and Elite Eights and whatnot, because they came from other places. And this was back, way before NIL and transfer portal. And but everybody Oklahoma State had pretty much on that team was a transfer. Lucas was from Baylor. The twins were from UCF.
Yes.
And trying to remember who the bigs and Ivan McFarland was a big, but he had been there for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So and then the next year they got Curry, who had signed with North Carolina but got in a little trouble. He was the leading scorer all time in North Carolina. And he's here in Oklahoma. I run into him every weekend, but coaching AAU. But
I remember sitting there pretty close to you there and on press row, and we were like, because John and Ronald were just going back and forth at each other down the stretch.
It was a battle.
Game. It was one of the best games I've seen. I remember Ronald obviously was a walk-on there at Texas Tech, one of Bob's favorite guys, and they weren't really supposed to be that good, and he ends up winning Big 12 Player of the Year.
I tell you my Bob Knight story when I grew up in West Lafayette, Indiana as a Purdue fan, right? And Purdue used to just kill them when I was a little kid. And then Bob Knight came and it all changed. Well, so, Bob Knight's the devil to me. I'm, a 10-year-old kid and I love Purdue and I hate Indiana, And so many, many, many years later, focused to see Bob first gets the job and Pat Knight calls me up, Pat. And Pat had grown up playing in my events and taking my service when he was at Akron. And so we're talking a little bit and he said, hey, by the way, you probably know my dad just got the job at Tech. I'm going to join him. And we're going to need some help in your neck of the woods in recruiting because we don't, in Indiana, we haven't recruited that area very much. So I go, well, yeah, I'd love to. And he goes, my dad wanted to know if he can do anything for you. I go, yeah, come on my show. So it's the first time I had him on. I'm a little nervous because we all know Bob's reputation, and I don't want to get cussed out on my own
reporters and radio guys. It didn't matter.
So I was a little nervous, and we got him on, and he was great. I mean, the first 5 minutes, he's telling me how he's going to have to change a choke in his shotgun because the birds in Texas are bigger and tougher and all that kind of stuff. We talk about his wife, Karen Edgar, who was a great high school Hall of Fame coach here in Oklahoma, and just lots of stuff, and talked about Pat. And so the next day I'm at OSU practice because, Eddie would let me in there. And so he comes in out of the locker room. He stops. He looks at me and goes, didn't you have Bob on your show the other day? And I said, yeah, he was very charming, believe it or not. He looked at me, kind of rolled his eyes. He goes, he can be.
Well, they had a little beef after when he was at Kentucky, right?
You read the book. Yeah. You read the book, Soul Influence or one of those books, but they got, but every time he was at Oklahoma State, as a coach when he was with Tech, and a couple of times he got his butt kicked pretty good because Oklahoma State's a tough place to play, and you had Eddie going in the right direction and all that. But they would always, when one would come out of the media room, the other was getting ready to go in, they'd always shake hands. Were very cordial. So, and I think they were friends even when that incident happened with Indiana and Kentucky, but they got over it. It's like guys, we fight and we get over it, right?
Yeah, it's only women hold girls.
No, my wife remembers stuff I did 33 years ago when we got married. So
I get it, man.
If you're married, you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, I'm not anymore, but I.
That's probably part of it. If you're not anymore, then you know what I mean.
I do. We could talk about this kind of stuff all day because I love.
Oh, absolutely.
But let's get into this. What has been going on here in the last 24 or 48 hours that you're starting to hear so many things? I saw the tweet last night where you were saying that it's and you were just talking about it too, that Arizona and Colorado, but they may stop there. What do you think finally has got the ball rolling here? Because it seems like
Colorado had a meeting last week that everybody knows about. And it might have been about an accountant because they did lose one. But I think there were some things talked about that they don't necessarily have to put out to public yet on the conference realignment stuff. This time they're having a meeting tomorrow. I believe it's 3:30 their time, Mountain Time, and they're having a one of those secret meetings with the Board of Regents and all that stuff, and they're asking a lawyer about a question is what is on the agenda. I don't know if you have that in front of you, Jason, or not. You probably do. But I think they're going to ask, one of the agenda items is they're going to ask legal advice on an upcoming issue. Okay. I may be paraphrasing there, but I don't have it in front of me. A lot of you might see it online already. But check back 13 years ago, June of 2010. They had a meeting, and we now know what that meeting was about and what they did with it. But here's the other deal on that is that it's almost word for word. And I'm going to give credit to our buddy Greg Flugar with Flugar Empire and his Peek Around the Corner show. He does a great job on some of that technical stuff that I'm probably not near as good
I
at.
like Greg's show a lot.
I like Greg a lot too. You know what? I asked people on the internet last week, what do you like about conference realignment, people who cover it, and what ones do you not like? Everybody likes Greg because he's kind of one of us. I mean, he's just a fan of football. He gets excited about it. I don't really see him pushing too many agendas. We all have agendas. I mean, but he's a Big Ten guy. He's Minnesota. So for him to talk about this situation, I think we get a little, you got it there?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
But very similar wording to the one in 2010 that Greg pulled up. And I think everything's headed that way because their board is doing the exact same thing they did when they left the Big 12 to get to the Pac-12.
Right.
And that's why, a million other things too, but this kind of seals the deal.
Yeah, and as you said, legal advice on a specific matter, athletics matter at CU Boulder. Athletics matter at CU Boulder. Personnel matter at the CU system, personnel discussion. So obviously it's, I mean, they're talking about something to do with athletics, and they don't have to tell anybody right away. It doesn't sound like, but that's all right. This is just another one of those. My question, my next one was going to be, can you believe all of this, even coming from journalists that we've come to should have been able to respect, when you start talking about some of these guys out on the West Coast, and we don't have to bring their names up or anything like that, but I mean,
everybody knows who they are by now.
Everybody knows who they are. And we talked about Altamore and Monty, and those guys aren't journalists, they're not. Obviously, Monty's he's a YouTuber and he's had a radio show and stuff like that. I'm not saying that he's never worked in sports, but I couldn't tell you what Tony Altamore's he says he's a consultant. What is he consulting on? Because
I don't know. He has a lot of graphs and stuff that are really skewed.
And none of them matter. That's the whole thing. If
they don't make any sense.
$700 million. That was the question. If that $700 million that Washington raised for their hospital in 2020 had anything to do with conference realignment, they would have just signed the deal, wouldn't they have?
Yeah, and here's the funny thing about that. And I don't know if I don't even remember if we talked about it on Bomber's show before, but my dad was the associate dean of the Engineering, Architecture, and Technology College at Oklahoma State for about 20 years.
Right.
And I, of course, as I got into sports after graduate school and everything, Dad and I would talk about it. Of course, he's a PhD in aeronautical engineering from Ohio State, so pretty sharp guy, a lot sharper than me. So we're sitting down talking. I said, Dad, what are your biggest donation days to the engineering department? Because I know he'd get up 6 o'clock every, back, you're old enough to remember back when we had all our football games were at 1:30, right? Mm-hmm. So he would get up 6 o'clock, go to Engineering South building, meet all these folks who might only come in for one game a year. And that's the only time they come back to Stillwater, right? And so he would show them around and maybe show their kids around, get them all excited, and then make some donations.
Sure.
I go back to Kansas in '88 when they won the national championship with Danny Manning in basketball.
I remember that.
The next day was the biggest academic, not athletic. Well, athletic, they made money too, but academically, they made more money that day than any time in history. Sure. So if you think there's not a connection between athletics and academics, that's positive, not negative, because guys like Altamore and some of them are trying to make it sound like, if Colorado goes to the Big 12, they're not going to get any academic money. What the hell does that have to do with anything? I remember asking Dad before he passed away a year and a half ago, like, Dad, what is the deal? Why are some of these schools acting like if they leave the Pac-12, where, it's a really great academic conference, no doubt, they're going to lose money? They're not going to lose money. No, they'll make money. And you know why? You know why Colorado's going to make more money than they ever have athletically and academically? Because more people they've already sold out their tickets. People are going to come to games. They're going to get excited for the first time in 20 years about Colorado football. They're going to be back home in the conference they remember.
With
because
the pipeline into Texas.
Yeah, when the alums were all, less Texas now, which is why all them left in the first place. Like Nebraska. Gosh, I go to Nebraska every once in a while, and people go, gosh, we wish we were in the Big 12 again. But, we're smart. They're not going to turn down that money. I get it.
Oh, of course not.
But it's at least twice to not three times what we get. And I get that for all their other programs. If it were just football, it would already be done, money or not, because they have to make the money to fund all their other programs. They've got a big time women's volleyball program and some, other sports that you got to fund. That's what's going to be. And I don't want to hijack your show or anything.
No, go ahead.
But Jason, what's going to happen in the future? And I had Dr. Rooney in graduate school, who was my advisor. He is the father of sports geography. And he wrote a book called The Recruiting Game back in the late 70s. That's how almost, 45 years ago. Said eventually you're going to have a breakaway from football and basketball because they make all the money, but they don't get to keep all the money.
Right.
All their profits go to non-revenue sports, or as those coaches like to call it, Olympic sports. They don't like me calling it non-revenue, but
Title IX, things like that as well, too.
Yes,
right?
Yes. Now, here's how you get out of Title IX deal. If you want to keep all your money, you have football, for instance, at the University of Oklahoma. You have Sooner Football Incorporated, and they're like an arm of the university, but they're not technically tied to the university. They're a separate entity.
Right.
So now they can recruit, they can pay players, they can even make those players. And I think this is what's going to happen. And this is what Dr. Rooney predicted 45 years ago. He said they're going to basically become employees of the university. They can choose to go to school or not. It's not going to be required. It'll be like a semi-pro team. It won't be a college team necessarily, because some of those guys will go to college on the side. Some of them won't. Some of them will work, do whatever. They'll get paid, obviously. And he thought that about 20 to 30 teams eventually, by the turn of the century or soon thereafter, would start to do that. And I think we're in the early stages of that happening, because I don't see, with the money we're talking about, and they're saying the next time around it won't be anywhere near as high for any of the conferences because of the streaming and things like that. They're going to bring down the costs. That there will be teams, SEC, Big Ten, obviously, and there might be some other ones that get picked up over time, the Clemsons, Florida States, whatever. I think those teams will be in the super conference. And would Oklahoma State be there? I don't know. They would be an iffy win at this point. But I know Oklahoma did try to help bid for those folks out there who, Oklahoma State fans that get mad at Oklahoma. Oklahoma, when they were asked by Texas, hey, you want to join us kind of thing? Yeah, let's give our buddies a shot here. They did bring it up. I've confirmed that, so I'll give them that at least.
I think it's an SEC thing more than it is anything else with Oklahoma State.
Agreed.
From what I understand, but
Getting
back to this other deal now. Obviously, we talked about this agenda meeting. What are you hearing though out of Arizona? Where did this kind of pop up? Because it seemed like all the talk was about UConn. Where did this Arizona stuff pop up?
Well, I think they want to take. I don't think UConn's off the table at all. Matter of fact, I think UConn is very strongly on the table. It just makes way too much sense. Here's the deal:
Gonzaga,
UConn's got to have the money.
Right.
Because they just won a national championship with a guy who everybody now wants.
Of course.
He's got a big name, Danny Hurley. You're going to have to pay this guy. And I'm getting a little feedback today. You don't know what you're talking about. UConn always pays its coaches. Yeah, well, the last coach you had that did all that was Jim Calhoun, and he was a lifer. He was basically on the end of his trail. You've got a guy now that's young.
Coach other than UConn that I can remember. I don't remember.
Well, it was.
I know at the end of his career, didn't he go to BC or something like that? Or
what was the guy that played for the Thunder that coached them to a national championship? Because it was right before Trae Young was about a sophomore. And I remember Ray J called me one day and said, "Hey, UConn just offered him," and that they had just won a national championship into their last one. what is that guy's name? Played for the Thunder for a little bit, but anyway.
I'll have it here in just a second. I'm trying to remember his name myself.
Kevin. That's
Yeah.
Kevin. Anyway.
Yeah, it was good grief.
While you're looking at
Kevin Ollie.
Thank you. And he didn't stay very long. But you've got a coach now.
Like that.
Well, here's what's funny. If somehow you got Arizona State and Connecticut in, you'd have both Hurley brothers, right? So
yeah. Hey, I tell you, it was funny watching those guys on the sidelines and stuff, and they were showing them when they were coaching the high school team and stuff how they were just up and off. I thought
they're competitors, no doubt about it.
Man, they are. And I've never been a big Duke guy, but I've enjoyed watching these two guys coach, and man, what a team that was. But again, I do feel like, what is it though that's brought kind of Arizona back to the forefront? Because I continue to hear that you might get some issue if Arizona State isn't wanting to go and Arizona tries to go. Can they stop them? I've heard some different things about that.
Well, but didn't you always hear, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State are joined at the hip? Texas A&M and Texas are joined at the hip before that. We put out there Texas A&M was leaving. We knew it. I mean, it's on our Twitter page from way back. Yeah. And I got just killed by a guy that's a Texas guy. What is that dude's name? He's got a show down there in Austin, Orange Bloods and all that. And he was telling me I was so wrong, that they're joined at the hip. It'll never happen.
The next day, they couldn't wait to get away from them.
It was like dealing with Baltimore before. It was for the Texas version, and he just wasn't going to hear it. Texas A&M can't leave. They can't leave legislatively. They can't leave.
Well, a lot of good that did. The legislature did get pissed off about it, and they
did. But listen, you know this better than anybody. Athletics and the money involved and things like that, anything can happen.
Absolutely.
And we've already seen Texas and Texas A&M break up, although now they're back. They pulled him back in again.
Yeah, but A&M's not happy about that either.
No, they're not happy about it.
They're all kinds of pissed. They're the ones that ratted out the OU Texas move before anybody wanted to say anything about it. They
and here's what's funny.
Things up.
Those other three teams that left, they're not happy where they're at. They haven't done squat since they left. Now, Missouri fans will tell you, well, we've been in 2 SEC championships. Well, if you're the East representative, you're going to get your butt kicked, and that's exactly what happened. So no big deal if you guys make it to the championship. And that's when Kentucky and Florida were both really to Georgia. We're all down. Probably won't ever happen again. But here you got Colorado coming back. Now, that's because they're not making any money.
I think with Coach Prime, that's going to be big for his having coached in Dallas and having that pipeline living in Dallas for all that time. That should help them, don't you think?
Well, yeah. And here's what's funny. Jason, don't you think, let's say 5 years, 6 years down the road, he's, had him in the playoffs and all that. He's improved them. And I think we all know, even Colorado fans deep down know, he'd like to go to a Texas school, right? Close to Dallas. Yeah. So he may still be in our conference after he switches school. There, well, you're taking a team that's going to be terrible in a couple of years because Prime's either going to leave because he gets fired if he doesn't do anything, or he's going to, get a much bigger job. That's great. That's for Colorado, that's great, because if he leaves without getting fired, that means they're a program again, right? And they can probably go get a better coach. So
absolutely. And I think that it all goes, it's just like you were saying about Nebraska. When you leave that conference, and now, Baltimore was talking about, and it was very negligible, by the way, the amount of alumni that are in California as compared to Texas. And I think it was like small percentage points of difference or whatever. Now, we all know that they don't really go and watch games in California, though, so it's not like that really mattered. But when you have – Texas is obviously, they put more players in the NFL than any other state when it comes to their high school kids. And now that you're going to be in Texas for a good part of the year, if you are indeed going to be in the Big 12, I think it's huge, because now these kids can see – going to see you again. And I think that's the exact reason that they've been trash ever since they got to the Pac-12.
No Texas recruiting.
That's right.
Cut them right off. Same for Nebraska. Remember how
Right.
many Texas guys Nebraska would get?
Oh
They
man,
used to
yeah.
come. When OU and OSU were both on probation in the late '80s, Nebraska, Kansas State,
Oh,
Colorado just came in and
they got
loaded up.
huge.
And that Colorado 91 national, was 90 or 91, was a direct result that, who else came in and got a couple Oklahoma 4 and 5-star players and did very, very well? Tennessee. So
Right.
Arkansas. And back then, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State weren't getting those guys because they were on probation. You weren't on TV. You didn't go to a bowl. And that
Right.
put Oklahoma State back a lot more, obviously, because they got not only a tougher probation, but if you're a blue chip, you can turn it around pretty quick. It's a little tougher when you're not.
No doubt about it. And I think that obviously things have changed with the NIL and everything, but I think it's clear that the people that are saying that Coach Prime isn't going to get it done there at Colorado, I think you're just wishing for it, because I don't see how you could look at it, what he's done since he completely flipped the roster over in 6 months.
We talked to a guy
12 guys that they had from last year's team.
And Kansas State, they are the Kansas State basketball team of college football this year, in that they're basically a brand new coach, gets everybody excited, brand new players, got rid of some other ones, and look where they were at. So just missed the Final Four. And I think, there's a lot of people who say, oh, they're going to win 1 or 2 games. I don't see how. They got talent. Now, is he a great?
You got a decent quarterback that can throw it and run a little bit, you're going to win games. And I think that TCU is going to probably have a bit of a hangover. They don't have a lot of anything coming back. And new system, because it's not the same system that the Riley guys run.
No.
That Lebby and, obviously Bryles run. We know that it's a different system,
Yeah.
I think Sonny's a good coach. I just think that they had a lot of those super seniors last year, and those guys are gone.
Well, and you know what's so big in college football anymore, that some people talk about it, but not very many, and I don't either. And then all of a sudden you think, one thing for them last year, didn't have any injuries. It's very similar to that Oklahoma 2000 team. You remember Bob Stoops' second team? He got him, winning a bowl game. I think the Independence Bowl, went 8-5 that first year.
Yeah.
The next year they go on like a murderer's row run in October with Kansas State, Nebraska, all those. And you know who Bo Overton is, right?
Yeah.
Bo left me some tickets for that and at a hotel, and got me a hotel room and everything. They played Kansas State, and I think Kansas State was number 1. Oklahoma had been moving up the polls, but they didn't suffer any injuries that year of significance. And that is such a big deal, because if Oklahoma, even though, they were 6-6 in the regular season last year, had a healthy quarterback for 3 games, they might have been 9-3. Let's not lie. It wasn't a good Oklahoma team.
124 in the country on defense.
Yeah, well, that too. But then again, if you're on the field a little bit longer, that defense gets a little longer rest. So those things play into each other. I really think that, people, is Oklahoma back this year? I'm not ready to say that. I am ready to say anybody who says Texas is going to win it all is crazy, because they say that every year. We're getting sick of that. We'll have to deal with it after a year.
It might be better if they played the backup quarterback.
Yeah, maybe. And they might get that chance. But,
yeah,
whereas Oklahoma, they had some injuries last year, and then injuries are part of the game. But it's a luck of the draw.
So different too, Greg.
You
know that.
The they got some players there.
And I mean, just the difference between what they were doing with Lincoln and what's his name, and obviously what they're going to do now. And I mean, they're bringing in guys in the portal, things like that, but just trying to pick it up with the guys they had left over.
Right.
It was a tough deal for them. And I think that, they looked pretty good those first few games. And then whenever they got up against some of the better teams, you got to stop. You can't be 124 out of 131. You can't.
Nope.
and win 10 games. It's just not going to happen.
Well,
but it was just like that at Clemson. His first year, Venables was there as the DC. It takes some time to learn that scheme. It's completely different, you know.
They'll be a lot better this year. Now, are they going to go 10-2? What was it? 9.5 was the
has them
over
at
under.
9.5. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, what do you think? What do you think? You going to go with the over and under? I mean, that only gives you 2 losses, and you lost. So
I feel like
say under.
I think the bottom, because their schedule's pretty easy too. You know, you look at it, you only leave Oklahoma 3 times. One of them for the Red River game. They kind of owe Texas on that one after last season. We'll see what happens. I think that the BYU game is going to be very hard for OU. I mean, you got to go on the road at the end of the year. You know, it's the second to last game of the season. That's a tough one.
Last time you guys played there was about 15 years ago, and Sam got hurt early on and lost. Mm-hmm. So that's not easy. If that's a night game, and I don't think it's been set yet, has it? But
I don't think it has. But Bomber says it'll be a night game.
You need to pray that's not a night game, because Provo at night, and I'm trying to remember what time of the year is that.
It's at the end of the season. It's the last. It's the last game. They got them, and then TCU's the last game of the year. So it's
the snow and the mountains, the altitude. I mean, that to me smacks of Oklahoma State and Iowa State 2011.
Listen, I agree. Yeah, listen, I can see it happening. I don't know how good those guys are going to be, but I can tell you that I would never pick them to go undefeated. It just, I don't remember the last time I saw it was the national championship year. So it's just not one of those things that you expect. Now, can they win 10? Yeah, I think they could backdoor 10 wins. And I think that the bottom better be 8, or else you might see Brent being a little bit of,
it'd be in a real hot seat for next year.
He's going to be heated up, headed into the SEC. I don't think anybody wants that. But if they can stop the run, I think you're right, Weston. If they, but again, it's a different story whenever you go to Provo, and I've seen games in that stadium. I saw Texas get mud stomped in that stadium.
They did. Was that the one they didn't let the? Was it Diaz was their defensive coordinator? They almost didn't let him ride back on the plane.
They got he
got fired. I mean, he definitely got fired.
Lit him up. They lit him up, and it was. I went with a buddy of mine in Vegas there, and he was a big Texas fan, and I was laughing and laughing. I enjoyed that game tremendously.
So, I can relate. But I'm excited about this season. And I'm excited about the future of the Big 12, not because, I think we're going to be better than the SEC or anything like that. I'm not crazy. But it might be a more fun conference to watch, because you're going to have some teams like Kansas State, Oklahoma State.
I agree with you.
Some of the 4 schools that have come in are good. Some other ones. I just think it's going to be a real fun conference. And let's be honest, when you're watching Alabama, LSU, number 1 versus number 2, and it's boring and it's a 6-3 game late in the game, you might flip it over to a game that's like 45-42 in 3 overtimes. You know what I mean? And the Big 12 has those kind of games, has those kind of teams. We don't play defense here. I get that, but to me, I love offense more than defense anyway. So that's just
it's fun to watch. But when your team's been to the playoff and never really had a chance, because other than that Georgia game, they should have won.
Yeah.
But if you can't play defense and have those big boys on that line, you're not going to win a national championship. And that's
we just don't get those defensive linemen they have in the SEC. And now I think that's where Oklahoma made the right move. I don't know if you could have won a national championship for the Big 12 anymore. Right? It's going to be tougher, because you're probably going to get 1 team out of 12, maybe 2 sometimes in a really good year.
There's going to be some years you might be able to get 2. And I think I'm still of the belief in, you said that you don't think that this is going to happen, but do you not think that Utah would help this?
Oh, yeah.
I think it'd be helpful because you've got that Holy War rivalry. And I've been saying this a lot. This is why we were talking earlier before the show about the SEC deal. I'm so angry about the 8-game conference schedule, because you're losing half of the rivalries in the freaking conference if you stick to that.
Well, if you're OU, you're going to play Texas. That game's a lock,
Yes,
right? But you want to play A&M, you want to play Arkansas, you want to play maybe a couple of the Mississippi schools, maybe Missouri for old time's sake, stuff like that.
I'm good with the Florida idea that have a build a rivalry with Florida, going to the Swamp every other year. I think that'd be great.
Be great for your recruiting too, because you're going to beat them a lot of times. You beat them in the Swamp, all those Florida kids. There'll be 100 Florida kids there for the game, and they go, "Ooh, I want to be a Sooner now." So it can happen.
And that's where I feel like it's just. I think that if you get a BYU and Utah in it, and Coach Whittingham's one of the best in the business anyway. I think that raises the level of competition even another level, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe that Deion Sanders is going to do a great job. I just think he is. And I'm not positive that he's just going to up and leave in a few years either. I think that this may turn out to be a very good deal for him. You go to Alabama and you don't win right away, which I don't know that he gets that job anyway, but you go and you don't win right away, they fire you. I've heard a lot of people say even at Florida State they won't hire him. So I don't know. I mean, I think I know that he's loyal to people.
Don't you think sometimes, like, I always tell my kids this, like, we lived in a small town for a number of years and they played basketball and football, won a couple state championships. I'm like, you know, you guys really need to behave because older people remember you when you were a kid.
Yeah.
And you're going to have a hard time dumbing down that reputation unless you're a good kid. So I think that's good advice for any kid.
It is. And I think that Utah, you know, they should just pipe down now and try to ingratiate yourselves a little bit.
There's some good folks. I know you work with
I like
Wild Ute and stuff like those are great guys.
I haven't talked to Wild Ute much, and he kind of ticked me off last week with some. He was bashing on CU, acting like you don't need to ask them in, you need to ask Utah. And it's like, where was this a month ago?
Well, I don't think it was him, but it was a lot of the fans.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it was just to me. That Wild. What is that guy's name? The pig guy.
Pig Bus or whatever. I blocked him a long time ago. I just feel why do you block somebody you don't disagree with? I go, no. Go look at my tweets. There's a lot of people I talk with that disagree with me, but they're at least respectful. If you're not respectful, I've blocked your ass day one. I don't have time for that crap. I really don't.
No, and that's what I don't mind the disagree. I think that's the only reason I go on Twitter is because you can kind of banter back and forth with people. I do it with Cody all the time.
Absolutely. It's fun.
And it's fun. But when you disrespect, the disrespect levels have been, and again, Utah's been a Power 5 school for 10 minutes. Settle down. You know, be glad that if you get to go to the Big 12 and not have to go back to the Mountain West Conference. And make $5 million a year or whatever it is that they're making.
Well, I try to explain to them how. I mean, let's be honest. Utah's not a bastion for football recruiting. Now they do have some good JUCOs, and that helps. We've all recruited Jukes from there.
Seems to do pretty good in Dallas too, for whatever reason.
Yeah, and they've had good Texas kids. I know that. Unfortunately, the young man that passed away last year was a Texas kid, and so But you know, if you're playing in Texas 2-3 times a year, it's going to help even more. So
sure, absolutely, I agree with you. Perfect Crackers wanting to ask what's with the rumor about Cale Gundy joining the OSU staff after
that came out last year, and Mike never did hire him, and he didn't fire the offensive coordinator. So maybe it happens after this year. Maybe there needed to be, after Cale got in trouble, and I hate to say got in trouble because I don't really think he did anything too terribly wrong. It wasn't like he was just saying it off the cuff. He was reading something. And, now maybe if he thinks about it a little bit, he doesn't do that. I get that. But
I think it was the fact that he repeated it more than once.
Yeah, that's probably true. And then there was somebody with an axe to grind probably, and those things happen. I used to tell people, if you cheat to get a player, it's not the other team that's going to turn you in that was recruiting him. It's going to be one of your own players that didn't get squat.
Yeah.
That's where the cheating always got turned in.
That's why we know about Lincoln. That's why we know about what Lincoln was doing.
I get parents call me and go, Greg, this kid on our AAU team, he got a car the other day. And this is back before that was legal, right? And it's like, well, what do you want me to do about it? I don't control that stuff. Well, what school is it from? I don't know. Well, ask him, and then call me back, give me the tip, and I'll know where he's going, But that stuff is, I should say this. I'll be real quiet here.
Yeah, say it.
I was doing a radio show right about 12 years ago at a dealership here in Oklahoma. I won't say where it is. I won't say the school, but the dealer comes over. He goes, "Hey, Greg, this kid's going to come in here in a second. You probably know him. Yeah, he's one of the best players in Oklahoma. I've watched him since he was about third grade." And he goes, well, his brother's going to be in here in a second, and he's going to buy a car. But you know where the car's going. And I kind of laughed. Yeah, that stuff happens back in the day. It happened all the time. Now it happens. It's totally legal. Yeah. It's like tomorrow if they made drugs and prostitution legal. To me, I'm still used to people cheating and trying to hide it. Now they don't even try to hide it anymore because I guess it's not cheating.
Hilarious last year when Jimbo was pounding the table that they didn't pay those guys and kept saying what was he saying? Slice bread. He sounded like Allen Iverson saying practice that day.
Well, Jimbo, see, this is what
you can actually. We know that you did it. Number one, the Bro Bible's a real thing that's been around for as long as I was a sports writer. And it used to not just be online; it was a book.
Right, that's a book.
It got.
I haven't seen one of those in a while.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen it too, but I remember seeing it. So, and I mean, it's not like it was hard to understand that when you get 5, was it 4 or 5-star defensive linemen?
Oh, he got everybody.
You dumped money in that. Yeah, he had the #1 recruiting class of all time.
You get a quarterback, apparently. If you don't have a quarterback, I don't care what else you have. You got nothing.
You got nothing.
I feel like Robert De Niro in Untouchable. You got nothing, So.
Well, I think I got to let you off here. You said you had to get out of here, but
I've got about 1 million. I think I'm doing like 17 or 18 shows this week and trying to cram it all in. And I guess that's what happens when you open your big mouth and somebody quotes you. But anyway, man, I appreciate having you on. I hope to do it again. And when we start our
anytime you'd like to, man, we'd love having you on.
We're going to get that YouTube show going later in the summer. So I want to get you on, okay?
Yeah, listen, and tell us where to find you and everything like that, but so that everybody can check you out.
The best place if you want to talk college sports realignment and recruiting is just go to G Swaim. That's GSWAIM, like in Mike, rhymes with aim. G Swaim over at Twitter, and we do it all there. And shoot, people think I don't even take a nap or go to bed because I'm on there 24 a day, but I get little naps in between.
Yeah, that's kind of how I work these days too. Well, exactly. I appreciate you coming on again, and we will definitely, anytime you'd like to come on, we'd love to have you. So thanks a lot.
Jason, I appreciate it, my man. Good to talk to you again.
Okay, buddy. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.
So that was obviously Mr. Greg Swaim, great guy, funny man. He's got stories and stories and stories. I'd definitely like to have him back on the show anytime to talk college football, college basketball. If you want to know Big 12 history, that's one of the guys that's definitely going to have it. Again, I kind of wanted to jump in here and do a little. I had a video yesterday that I was ready to put out, and I just had a feeling that something before, right as I got done editing it, I had a feeling that something was about to happen. I go onto Twitter, and sure enough, there's Greg breaking news that it's impending. He kind of gets off on tangents, and we talked about a lot of things, but this is the gist of it, is that Arizona and Colorado seem to be looking at making a move soon. And some people are even saying that it could come before. Swaim's my guy, man. I enjoyed him. And it was always fun, whenever I was covering the Big 12 as a reporter, getting to hang around with him when you did. He's a great guy whenever you go up to Stillwater. He's just a fun guy to hang around with. He's always got stories, and so good stuff. But again, I think we've all been kind of seeing the writing on the wall, unless you're a Pac-12 fan and still want to stick your head in the sand. And there is a lot of that. But these are guys, I mean, when you start taking shots at a guy like Greg Swaim, who's been around this league and has been doing recruiting stuff with basketball for the better part of 30 years, there's not a whole lot of folks that he doesn't know, being a radio guy. And then with the recruiting stuff, I mean, he's connected, he's plugged in. If you, for somebody like a Tony Altimore to start calling out people like Dennis Dodd and I mean, he's called out pretty much every major reporter in the country that's covered college football. Greg Swaim's one of those guys. He's been around it. He knows these guys. And there's some things that it's obviously sticking out. I know some people at Arizona State. I don't know how. I think that the whole AAU thing could have been a ploy, I guess, to get them to kind of hang around the Pac-12. I'm not one of those guys that I'm. You know what I feel about it if you've been watching this show is that I think it's all trash. It's bullcrap. None of that stuff matters. And I don't see the AAU taking away money like I saw on Kurtz's show last night. One of those guys was saying that they're going to take away their AAU status and, their research money and stuff like that. That's BS. And just like Greg was saying, I think that it goes up in the Big 12 because you're going to be able to do more research than what you're going to see going on with some of the other schools in the Pac-12. In the end, if that was the case, what's going to happen to Washington and Oregon if they leave? Did they just all of a sudden they get to, Stanford? They're going to stop, being able to, they're going to stop doing their research with schools that are in their neighborhood. Because just because you go to the Big Ten doesn't mean you move the college there, right? It doesn't mean you move the college there. So again, I think everybody's kind of seen this coming. I don't know how much longer it's going to last. It could be, you keep hearing that the end of June is when they're going to have this supposed media deal that supposedly still has a major player involved linear wise. I don't know where the space is. You're not hearing that from anybody but people like Wilner and Canzano, and Monty. Do I think that you could work it out on CW or Ion? Possibly. I think that you can, if you even listen to Jim Williams, he's talked a lot about how it's kind of moving back to the old way where you're going to get regional networks that are going to put in some of this money, and it's going to kind of go back to that where they're kind of selling their own product, conference by conference and even school by school. So I could see that kind of happening. In fact, it just happened with the WNBA in Las Vegas and the Golden Knights in hockey, who are in the Stanley Cup final now. It's honestly, you're going to see a lot of that stuff. I feel like is going to kind of move back to that. Do I see the money going down in college football? No, I don't. When they're increasing it to a 12-team playoff, that just means more money. It just means more money. That's all there is to it. So there's a reason why these guys are getting all that money to go ahead that way. Guys, if you enjoyed the content, please make sure that you hit that like button. That is the best way to support our program. Just by doing that, sharing it with your friends, getting giving us a subscription. I think we got a new one in here just a few minutes ago. I saw, who was that? Well, I saw him here a second ago. Anyway, thanks a lot for that. But again, Wayne Russell, thank you so much for your subscription. Make sure that you share this with everybody else. If you know somebody who loves college football, make sure you send them over. We are going to continue to bring more and more content all the time. We're getting ready to have this studio built. So, and we're working on that now. I'm going to start going at least 4 or 5 days a week during the day, live streams. Things are changing around here. We appreciate that. You can always support the show with tips as well. You can You can do it with tips, or you can do it with just by buying the merchandise that you're going to buy anyway. We are at 90 days until the season starts, so it's time to gear up and get gear ready. Make sure that you use our link right there above on the right hand side of your screen. It's the bit.ly/HOF in caps -fanatics. You get up to 65% off everything in the store just by using that link. We get a small commission for you doing that. It's a win-win. Great deals though going on right now. They've got a lot of new gear out. Go and check it out. If you want to check out our podcast merch, I didn't want to throw this up while Greg was here, but we've got our Mediocrity in a Can shirt. Our Okie Light Mic shirts are up there as well. Go check out the merch website. It's right here at the top of the screen, right above my head. And then you can always go with tips as well, as we've talked about. You can either hit us on Venmo, CASHAPP, or just hit that super chat heart. Give us a couple of bucks. We greatly appreciate it. It would be great. Working the old weed eater. Hey, Fatty, welcome back to the show, man. I appreciate you guys showing up. It was kind of an impromptu thing. I wanted to get him on last night, but when he broke the news, I just wanted to make sure we got whatever information we could out of him. And again, it's always fun when you have Greg Swaim on the show. So hopefully we'll be able to get him more and more often. Even though he's an Okie Light guy, we like him. He's a good dude. Good dude. I enjoy having creators from other programs all around. I think it's the best way to go about it. I enjoy going back and forth with some of these guys, and this guy's a storyteller. We enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it too, make sure that you hit that like button. We will be live again tomorrow night, 8:30 Eastern time, right here at CFB-pod right here on YouTube. You can check us out on Twitter as well. We're able to stream directly to Twitter even as well. So make sure you jump on there and do that. Again, guys, hit that like button. We'd appreciate it. This is a small tribute to the Golden Blue Dude. You know, I'll tell you something. I would like to do more of a tribute to the Golden Blue Dude. I want to get with Kuz and some of these other guys about that, and even Mark Rogers. I've been on his show the last month, pretty much every Wednesday. You guys check us out. We'll be there. It's every Wednesday at noon, 12:30 Eastern time. I'm sorry, 12:30 Eastern time on the Voice of College Football. We're talking OU football there, and so I'll be on there as well. But I really would like to do some stuff and help. I think they're gonna try to do some stuff with his channel. The last I saw, his brother did a show not that long ago. I'm glad you brought that up, Fatty. Golden Blue Dude is a good guy, man. And you know something is crazy about this topic. I'll tell you something, man. I love the whole speculation zone thing that he was doing before he passed. It was hilarious. And because he took a lot of heat, he took a lot of heat because he was going to let you know anything he heard. But he would let you know that he had his sources. I love the whole thick skin thing. I didn't get to know him well personally. I watched his show, and I really feel like GBD kind of helped me to want to, be a creator as well. And you saw him just killing it. I mean, he was kicking butt. So it was cool, man. It was good stuff, man. I appreciate it. He was a funny guy. He was a funny guy. Even whether you agreed with him, didn't agree with him, whatever, I thought he was hilarious. And the dude it's kind of like we talk about Stovall, energy for days. He loved what he was doing. You could see that passion in him. It's just awesome. And that's what I love about this stuff too, man. There's a lot of passionate folks around here. And no matter who you're a fan of, there's just passion. And I love that. This is why I love college sports and college football in particular. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, man. That's cool. That's very cool. So again, make sure you guys hit that like button. We will be on again tomorrow night, 8:30 Eastern time, right here. Lack of substance in the whole realignment. Hey, Pac-12, do something even if it's wrong. John, yeah. Yeah. That's all they do is wrong, though, John. thank you for coming in, and for your comment. I appreciate that. I agree. I agree that they haven't really shown anything as far as any. They just talk about stuff that doesn't matter. So that's it. But thanks a lot for coming in and checking out the show, everybody, folks. We will see you again tomorrow night. Thanks again. Hey, you guys all know the drill, right? Say it with me. Smash that red subscriber button. Like our videos. And don't forget to ring the notification bell so you don't miss one moment of the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast. Hey, we even have amazing pod merchandise right here in our store. Hey, while you're here, don't forget to check out all these other amazing channels and subscribe to them too.